just watching you guys hang out, whether you're recording stuff on the road, you're just always having fun. And it seems like just the tightest group of guys. I was kind of shocked waking up this past summer, seeing that, Eric was taking a step back, but at the same time, I wasn't like, oh, this isn't like some drama thing. He's probably just doing his thing with Flightless and the rest of the guys are moving forward. Does it feel different now that he's kind of not in the mix? I know we're not like back to touring, but just listening to the Live in San Francisco record that was out with K.G. back in November, you hear that person right at the start before you guys go into the start of Nonagon with Robot Stop. They go, how do you have two drummers? That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely sad to see Eric go, and it will be different on tour, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, we're just kind of still out here doing our thing, and I think it would have been a lot weirder to get another drummer. Like, I think for us, that would have definitely been weird. That would have felt very weird. So we didn't even contemplate doing that.
I mean, Eric was so important and instrumental with the band for so many years, and he really had a big impact on just it was a group thing, but he's very DIY, you know. Eric's DIY, and I am too, and I think that's why we clicked. I think that's why Eric and I clicked, and it was cool and inspiring to just see him run a label and just do everything. And I think that's why we worked really well together, because we both just had that same attitude that we don't know what we're doing, but we'll figure it out. We don't need help, we'll just work it out along the way. And that's what we did for a long time. And I think as Flightless kind of grew and kind of took up more of Eric's time, it became, he's just doing too many things. It became impossible to do all of the things well. But yeah, Eric's no longer with us. Actually, that makes it sound like he's dead. Eric's alive. He's just no longer with the group anymore. Yeah.
When we first started having these ideas to make another Microtonal record, it was before coronavirus. So a few of these songs have their genesis in those times, and we just thought we were kind of business as usual, making a record like we always do. But we had to kind of put all that on hold and just think, okay, this isn't ending anytime soon. We're making records from our bedroom for a while. Who knows how long, but let's just commit to it. And we just had to learn how to work. So Cavs, the drummer, he set up microphones on his drum kit in his garage, which he'd never ever done before. And yeah, I would send him songs and he would send me drum recordings back. We would just upload songs to Dropbox or whatever and send them around, and people would overdub on them and send them back. We just slowly figured out how to do it. And it was kind of just an open thing. There was always many songs on the go, and anyone was just free to overdub on them, basically. Every song came together as one overdub at a time, or every song on this record. One overdub at a time, one person sent something, put it on the track. Usually it was up to me to kind of edit things and work out which things would be kept or which sections, or maybe move this thing around to this other section or this other part. I think it defined the record the records, both of them, in a lot of ways, because I think if we were making records like we usually do, it would have sounded different. A lot of the songs wouldn't have been written at all, and the ones that would have maybe been written would have sounded completely different to they do now. So
a handful of these songs, for example, Automation, Honey, Plura, Straws in the Wind, were songs that had their genesis in jams with real people in the same room, yeah. Without masks on, like the real feel and the sweat and the synergy. But more or less, this record was made in lockdown, and that was something that we had to learn to do, which was honestly really fun eventually. It just required a little pain and a little perseverance.
Yeah.
We did work it out though in the end. It's funny, a lot of us live very close together, like within a couple of 100 meters of each other, so it's like, instead of being in the same room, we're just around the block, but we're all working on the same thing at the same time. We didn't set out to make 2 records. We set out to make some music, and we wrote a lot more songs than we expected. Once
a bunch started to come together, we sort of grouped them together and finished them off first. So KG did come together earlier, but you know, there are songs on L.W. which were written well before songs on KG and vice versa. But they're a pair. When we were starting to toy with the idea of making another microtonal record, you know, we had made one kind of like microtonally based record before. The concept was we refretted guitars and bass guitars and retuned keyboards and harmonicas and whatever instruments that we could to hit notes between the notes. So it's all tuned microtonally. There's kind of notes outside of the Western sphere. This record we wanted to expand a little bit. With FNB, or Flying Microtonal Banana, we wanted it to sound like a thing. But this record we wanted to sound colourful and free and varied, which I think ultimately was the reason that we wrote so many songs, is because we let it be outside the box. So we're messing around with microtonal tunings, and it is still the core of the songwriting, but it's more freeform. There's a lot of different scales, or more varied scales in their own FMB, and more varied feels and textures and sounds and sonics and stuff. Anyway, getting back to Automation, as I said, this was one that came together early in a real room with real people playing real instruments at the same time. It was a 3-piece kind of jam, and it was never really anything. It was kind of, I don't know, I think we may have just come back from tour or something and were sort of like packing up or putting away gear or something, and there happened to be a couple of mics laying around, and Cavs and Joe and I were just jamming on like a groove, and I just like plugged the laptop in and clicked record because it was all kind of there, and I didn't really think too much of it until we were making music in lockdown.
Yeah.
And I was scouring through recordings trying to find things that had a live feel, because I missed it at this stage. And we hadn't worked out how to be a band again. And I found this recording. I could never find the actual multi-track session. It might have been recorded on someone else's computer or something, because all I have is like a bounce down, like a mix down. It's just 2 tracks.
Yeah.
But anyway, that became the basis for the song. So all I did was like cut it up a little bit. It's a shit recording. Like it's all, everything's stuck together, and it's like whatever. The mix is strange and weird and everything. But there is another demo of this song. We actually released it. It sounds nothing like this at all. It's only the same lyrics.
Yeah, so the lyrics for the song that ended up on KG were demoed with the idea that they might be part of Infest the Rat's Nest, but then you took those lyrics and put them to this music.
That's right. So how this came together was, I remember going through old recordings, just trying to come up with ideas for this microtonal record, stumbling across this jam and thinking, actually, that's kind of dope. I forgot about that. We should do something with that. Oh yeah, I've also got these lyrics that I really liked that we cut. And the lyrics are sort of phrased differently, melodically differently to the Infest the Rat's Nest-ized version. But it sort of just came out of an ad lib of the lyrics over a different jam. And then I think I just chopped it up, moved it around till it felt right, then overdubbed. Yeah. I don't usually work that way, by the way. That was an unusual way to work. I don't usually work that way.
Right, okay.
It's because of COVID, because,
right,
you know, usually I'd say to the guys, let's get back together, let's jam again, let's try and fuse these ideas. It would have ended up completely differently. It might have been better, it might have been worse, I don't know, but it wouldn't have ended up like this.
Yeah.
Which I'm proud of. Like, I'm proud of the fact that we've made a record which is idiosyncratically ISO life.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I still think that it still sounds like you all playing together in a room, even though you weren't. I mean, obviously you did at one point before this all happened, and you know, were starting on the journey to these records at that point. But, you know, the way that you've recorded these individual parts, it still has that kind of loose approach to things, you know, that makes it feel as if you're all playing together.
We've been playing together in a room for 10 years. Like, I think that's what it is. We're not leaning into a loose thing. I think we've played with each other for so long. I think it's the only way we know how now. Automation is just overdubs on top of that track. That's the drum track, that's the bass track, and that's the rhythm guitar track.
Originally taken from that jam that you were having.
Yeah, it's just the jam. When I play the jam, it's just like
the song, but a bit. I've cut out a few sections and kind of like EQ'd it and tightened it up, and then just like overdubbed the fuck over it, you know?
Yeah.
I'm talking about AI probably being more intelligent than us eventually, and probably taking over. Like, I know I sound like a psycho, but like it's probably going to happen, right? And I guess this is my Pledge Allegiance song. It's like, if you take over and I'm still alive, I'm with you. I'm not against you. It's cool. Don't kill me.
Excellent. So, I mean, does that link to the rest of the words that are on KG?
Not really. I mean, we've made our fair share of concept records, or records that have a narrative that's clear. That's really fun to do. We didn't want to do that with these records because, to me, it wasn't in the spirit of the rainbow, like, colourful idea of letting it be free and letting it go in whatever direction it wanted, and letting each song have its own sound and its own texture, which we usually don't do. Usually when we make a record, it's like every song has to fit. It's like a puzzle, you know, and sometimes we're making a record and we write a song, or a song comes together that we're so excited about, and it's just like, how do we make this fit into the record? And you've just got to say, this can't be on this record, and it's heartbreaking because you're so excited about it. Eventually that song will find a place, and sometimes it takes years, and that has happened with us a lot of times. But this one was like, no, anything that you're excited about is on this record. You know, go with the microtonal theme, but any feel, any vibe, any lyric, it's cool, it's rainbow.
One of the songs that continues to blow my mind, put it in my workout mixtape, is Intrasport. Can you tell me about the inspiration behind this track?
Yeah, this is a Joey-led track. Joe has a background in electronic music. Like when we met, he was a DJ, like making electronic music and touring around Europe and stuff a lot, and just playing clubs and stuff. But he always had this kind of like interest in rock and like folk and metal and like all sorts of other stuff. So Joe's joke is that Intrasport is his like government sanctioned electronic like house track or whatever. Usually King Giz is just sort of free for anyone to contribute as much or as little as they would like, depending on the circumstance or how much they're into the particular project. It means that there are always awkward conversations because you can't have everyone's opinion all of the time, but we try our best to respect each other and be as democratic as possible. Ultimately it means I sometimes have to cut something that someone is really proud of. But I hope everyone in the band knows that I will always listen to whatever they think, and whatever anyone sort of like puts forward is always considered. It is hard. Like, I kind of see my role as producer in like an old-fashioned sense as well. I'm trying to just get the best out of everyone. And I'm really lucky to play with the other five because it's a super talented bunch. And, often if someone didn't contribute something themselves, they have a strong opinion on what one of the other guys might have played as well. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of opinions, but somehow we make it work, and I think it's because we love each other heaps.
Yeah.
I had this feeling that there was an opportunity to create two records with two distinct personalities. I also wanted to deliberately not work on 19 songs simultaneously. It's too many. Like, I can't fit that many ideas in my head at any one time. So, this sounds conceptually weak, but part of it was just saying, okay, here's 10 songs that are sort of in a stage of like, I can see these coming together, I can see these being finished. I'm talking about the songs we ended up choosing for KG. We've got an intro that feels like an intro, which was K.G.L.W. We've got an outro that feels like an outro, which was The Hungry Wolf of Fate. There's a lot of songs in the middle that I like. I can see a sequence. It's like there is a puzzle. It's like you got 19 pieces, but it's kind of like, let's fit them together first. Let's just hit pause on the rest, clear some space in the brain, and finish KG.
to me, it's just a little bit more of an efficient way of working because I just need to clear that space. I know it sounds like it should be more thought out than that, but honestly, it's not. It's just like, I'm just finishing songs one at a time, you know?
Yeah, well, that seems perfectly understandable because you've tried different approaches many times, and your work rate is unmatchable, really. I mean, if L.W. is the 17th album that King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard have released, then, you know, you've tried all sorts of ways, and you'll know by now what works for you and gives you some kind of sanity. Because in some ways, for many bands, the whole approach of the world of King Gizzard would be seen as insanity. And even though you put out technically one album in 2020, you still put out 6 live albums and the demo collection that...
We did a film as well, which was extraordinarily
yeah.
time-consuming and just a massive passion project. Like, I don't know how to make a film. It was amazing to work alongside essentially 2 people that made that film. It was very cool. I think the prolificness thing, I like making music. It's really fun. It's like my favorite thing to do. I feel relieved when I do it. I feel stressless, you know. I don't have another job, you know, like...
Yeah.
I also do believe in the clearing of the mental space, like I was saying before. And there is nothing better in the world for that than releasing something where you can't change it, you can't edit it. You know, I find it very hard to stop thinking about a song until it's on a physical medium that someone else can play. And I can't change that anymore. You know, it's incredibly liberating because I can stop thinking about like the automation riff in my brain, you know what I mean? It's going around in my head until it's finished and it's out and it's done. Okay, next melody, next groove, next thing is stuck in my head probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like that. I mean, there's a lot of songs that were kind of made for these records, you know, 19 that we ended up using. And the record needed a theme song. It honestly was kind of as simple as that. And the gentle kind of like folk song theme was what was first. But as soon as I kind of got this riff down and sent it around, it was something that more than one person said, like, we need to do this as like a doom metal version.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't think about that. You know, that's not what I had in mind, but cool. All right. So soon after that, the kind of like, you know, doom version sort of started to come together. I'm kind of probably jumping ahead a little bit here, but it was short, like the intro, and it was going to be the theme song for album 2 and open album 2 at that stage, or L.W. But it just kept growing. And then I started tapping into this idea of a linear thing where there's stacks of riffs and heaps of ideas and melodies and stuff, and nothing necessarily repeats. I mean, the only thing that repeats is the theme, and it repeats a couple of times in the middle and the end, which is something I just wanted to explore, like more linear songwriting, you know, instead of kind of like more of a circular thing, which is what I kind of like gravitate towards generally. Honestly, we are really just making music to dork out with each other. But it is a nice tool, you know. So many of our songs have come together with ideas like this. It's just like a stupid idea. Like, you have this idea and sometimes you just have to see it through because you don't know what will happen if you do. The theme song for KG came together very late in a piece. It was the last piece of the puzzle for that record because it needed a theme. And I think it was around this time that we had made the call to make 2 records and to name them KG and L.W. Actually, that was Jason's idea, who's kind of our artist who does all of our cover art. And he had this idea to create like a sculptural piece that had K.G.L.W. And I was like, oh yeah, so that should definitely be the album name. And he was like, yeah, I guess so. That's cool. So it was kind of Jason's sort of idea. But I think whatever we named the record would have been what we chanted.
Right.
Like, if the record was named something else, I think that's what the chant would have been.
Yeah. And are there any other words in that track?
There aren't many. It's all sort of just around around that. It's not supposed to be a word thing.
Right.
It's about power and extremeness.
Yeah. And I guess in a way showing the two sides of the band and the sound, so you've got the beautiful gentle side that you were telling us about, that links into you being a gentle fella. And then you've got the heavy dark side, which is kind of really a play. It's you playing with that idea of being heavy monsters.
I think you're allowed to do that when you're a band.
Oh, totally.
I think,
yeah,
I like that. It feels natural to me to play a character, especially when making music.
Yeah.
Some people like to write super honestly. That's cool. I do that occasionally too. But I think I've only got so many stories to tell, that are about me. My life's like, it's cool, it's sweet, it's fine. It's kind of just whatever. I like stories about humanity and stuff more. We finished this song. This record was done. Both records were done. K.G.L.W was done. We had a mastering date booked. It was like tomorrow or something. It was like the next day. And Joe called me and he was like, dude, I had this idea for K.G.L.W. And I was like, did you know we're mastering tomorrow? And he's like, yeah, but it's good. And I was like, okay, sweet, what is it? He's like, I've been sampling MRI machines and like gunshots and chainsaws and like really scary noises, and I've been playing them over this song. I've got like a sequence. And I was like, okay, that sounds perfect. So you can hear them through the song. I would play them, but I bounced out the track. It was done. It was like a wave file. It was like a song. It was done. And Joe literally overdubbed on top of it and sent it back to me and was like, I think this is done. And we finessed it a couple of times forward and backwards, but we just flattened it on top of the flattened track.
Do you thought that it's also some sort of closing a chapter of the first decade of the band and starting the new decade of the band on with these two albums?
Yeah, maybe you could look at it like that. I think you can look at it like that if you want. There was, of course, like all these, there's a lot of recurring themes and there's a lot of sounds that kind of like tie the record together, but it needed a theme song. We wanted an overture, we wanted like a theme song, and it's kind of as simple as that. It was an opening. It was a theme song. It was always called K.G.L.W because it felt like the band's walk-on song. So, I mean, I don't know. It is as simple as that. It feels like a two-part to me. It feels like both records, which we tried to have a beginning, middle, and end of both records. We tried to have them both kind of tell a story, but then with this overarching kind of like double record narrative thing. Anyway, that's what we tried to do. That's the idea anyway. The next record is, I don't want to say too much because I want it to be a bit of a surprise.
Okay.
But if K.G.L.W was the kind of learning curve of figuring out how to make records in this kind of setting, I think by the time we got to this record, we'd figured out how to do it. And this record leans into this sort of I don't know, 6 people in different places kind of thing. It leans into that feel. It's a record that we all wouldn't have known how to make a couple of years ago.
Butterfly 3000, album number 18, which is insane. You can say that you guys are on a roll. 3 records in almost 1 year. K.G.L.W and now Butterfly 3000. What is going on?
I don't know. We just like to make music. I like to make music. I don't have another job. You know what I mean? Like, I just make music. It's just what I do. I love touring and stuff as well, but what I really love the most is kind of creating something fresh and something new and exploring some element or aspect of music that I haven't done before, or trying to kind of go to some new place or create some kind of album which has a bit of a landscape and a feel and a texture and things, and that kind of escapism that sort of comes with all of that. It's my favorite thing to do. So I think naturally have been fairly drawn to just doing that as much as I can.
Yeah.
Those three, K.G.L.W and Butterfly 3000, were all made in kind of COVID lockdown type times. So they all, I think I will look back on these records and think of them sort of in a bit of a set. Like, you know, they were a lot of overlap with the songs. Some songs from Butterfly predate a lot of songs from K.G. and L.W. There's just a lot of overlap with all of those. And they're all kind of just made in this weird world that we live in where we don't tour anymore and we can't make music in our traditional way. So we just made different records. And that's nice. I'm kind of proud of that aspect of these three.
I can imagine. I mean, I read somewhere that Dreams was kind of like a little bit of a foundation for Butterfly 3000. You made that song in back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. That song was recorded for Chunky Shrapnel. For the kind of score, I guess, the music for it. If anyone knows, the piece of music that ended up going there is called Anamnesis, and it's like this part of the film that just shot on Super 8 and it goes into split screen.
Yeah.
And yeah, Dreams was written for that sequence, but it just didn't have the right tone. But we just knew that it was something. And at this point it was, instrumental and it was different. But the synth part on Dreams that ends up on Butterfly 3000 is literally recorded there. It's literally the exact piece. And so we just kind of fleshed it out and did a lot of drums and other recordings and stuff. And at this point, we didn't really know we were making an album. I guess we just kind of made it as a standalone song, and we just opened to it being what it ended up being. But it sort of did feel like, this is kind of a special, different feel that we haven't explored much. So let's kind of make a whole record that feels like this. Over a kind of long period of time, that the record just kind of evolved and came together like that.
So when you discover a sound that you guys haven't done before, does that scare you or does that excite you?
No, it's the most exciting thing. It's the most exciting thing, and because it feels like, okay, this one song just turned into 10, which is kind of like what, Dreams felt like. It was having puppies, and all the other songs just needed to grow up or something. It's a really nice feeling, and sometimes that process can be quite quick, and once you kind of get there, it's like, okay, everything comes together quite quickly. And sometimes that process can take a really, really long time, years. Sometimes that process can take years. So I think there are a lot of songs that we just keep in the back pocket. It's like, no, this is part of a broader project.
Right.
This one's something that we sit on until it has time to blossom. And I mean, we didn't intend specifically for K.G.L.W and Butterfly 3000 to come out so quickly. They just were made in a fairly... They're actually, all three of those records had a longer gestation period. I'm talking about puppies again. The gestation period, they were made, over a longer period of time, but they were finished quickly. They were finished quite close together, so we put them out quite close together.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just as simple as that.
I think he once said, just trust us. You might not understand where this is going right now, but trust me, it will all make sense in the long run. Can you tell me more about that plan?
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is maybe don't analyze King Gizzard in a kind of this song, or even maybe this record, I would and people can analyze this however they want, whatever. But I think the best way to kind of think about our band is to kind of take the whole package. And if you want to try and dive into the 18 records that we've made, Butterfly 3000 makes, in my mind, more sense after you've listened to Fishing for Fishies, Invest the Rat's Nest, K.G. and L.W. And I think that's what has always been the funnest thing to me, is just kind of thinking about the zoom out and stuff. Everyone's just like, it's so joyful, like it's so happy, and like you made it in the pandemic, what? And it's like, I mean, my take is like, of course that's what you make, you know, of course that's what you do. And you know, we've written a lot of songs about the world and how fucked it is, or climate change, or whatever, like how terrible our species can be sometimes, things like that. And in a time when everybody in the entire world is like glued to their phone, constantly looking at the news and like updates on the pandemic, it's just like, I don't want to ram it down people's throats anymore. You know, like it's time to just escape into butterfly land. Like I want to wake up in my dreams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just what felt right in that moment. It was a hard record to make, actually, in some ways. Yeah, it was a record where we were quite selective with the tracks. It wasn't, so sometimes we make records where it's like, just make so many ideas and so many like little ideas and demos and things, and then you kind of choose the best ones and you figure out how they all fit together, and it's like, you know, it comes together like that. Whereas this one was like very considered, I think, for a Gizzard record. And I think it's because after the first couple of songs came together, like Dreams, You Love, Black Hot Soup, they were the first kind of three, and Shanghai as well. They were the first ones that came together, and they maybe came together in a free way, at least in a rudimentary kind of phase. A record started to have a feel and a vibe, and it became important that every other song that we wrote lived in that world. And so it meant, in some ways we were restricted to like a certain feel or a certain sound, but it's because the record is meant to have like a landscape. Like you go into like this world and it's different. It's like some weird version of the future or something. So yeah, it was a hard record to make, and it did feel harder to write songs than for other records. And maybe it's just because, yeah, like you mentioned before, we've made a lot of kind of like darker or moodier song or records, leaning on, you know, scary sounds, dark textures and things. And this one, yeah, this one did feel like we didn't want to do that at all. And, you know, like that was just a hard spell to break, I think.
Yeah.
It's funny, like when I kind of look back on our discography and maybe I think about some of the musical tones, but also lyrical tones throughout different periods of records, I think they probably do relate a lot more to me or us personally than I realized at the time. You know, like you're talking about these broader themes of like, well, this is kind of like an anxious period, or this is kind of like, there's a lot of like pain in these records, you know, or like this one feels happy. And like, I actually was in the writing process of this record, I actually was like in an incredibly excited and happy phase. Yeah, I had a daughter 7 months ago, which was like kind of in the lead up to this record, and just feeling very excited about that. About to have a baby when we were kind of writing this. I think it was just like, it was a bizarrely nice time to be in a pandemic. Just to get nuclear is the word.
Yeah, just to be together. Just
yeah. I
love the metaphor you use for albums. I think you've once said something about like albums are like little families. Now you just mentioned puppies.
Puppies, yeah.
Yeah. It's obvious that you guys, when you look at the way that music is made now, don't look at it in like a traditional way. I mean, 3 albums in 1 year, like everybody would tell you like that is not a good idea. Are you ever afraid of this road that you guys are taking with the band?
I mean, we've never really done anything too conventional, so it's sort of has just been what we've done. In saying that, like, we're not always trying to make a point or some like statement. We generally just like following the creative muse, just doing what feels right at the time.
Thinking about Butterfly 3000, which when we made that record, that was the most electronic thing that we'd done at that time. But that was made during COVID, and it was mostly, I mean, it was almost entirely made without being in the same room as another person, really, at all. And so we kind of lent into that with that record, and everything is just overdubbed and, you know, laid one thing at a time and sending files around to each other and just kind of leaning into that as a vibe. And it was for us at that time very electronic. But, you know, because of the way that it was constructed, when we got together and tried to figure out how to play these songs, it was just like a fucking nightmare. It was so what's the opposite of intuitive? Whatever that is what it was. It was just counterintuitive. Maybe not even that. That doesn't quite feel right either. But and I feel like I've got a fair amount of discipline in my life in certain areas, but when it comes to rehearsal, I'm hopeless. Like I just hate it. I just can't wait for it to be over. And so with Butterfly, unfortunately, it felt like a bit of a casualty. You know, like Butterfly Live, maybe. It just felt like in order for us to just move on and just like make the next record and just like not spend all of our time like thinking about this synth arpeggiator in 13/8, like we need to just like put this to bed. So that was just, that kind of hurt, you know, a little bit, and sort of maybe didn't feel like we'd done that album justice. And I do feel like we do need to spend some time on it and go back there. And I think, well, I know eventually we will. I don't know how long that's going to take, but eventually we will play a lot more of those songs live. But anyway, since then, it's just been a nagging feeling to make something that's electronic leaning, but also just made live, like made by us in a room.